Baby Jesus. It's been deleted from YouTube, but if anyone has uh, recorded it, and they're welcome to upload it on your own channel to BitChute or Odyssey, whatever. Anyway, some things are too good to remain in this world, and only to go die young, and that's what happened in that video. Uh, I want to make a video today about a different topic other than the Rona Ronicles. Now, this is actually quite a serious topic that's been kind of ignored. But right now, there is an unspoken war, an economic war, against the UK by the EU. And it's using Ireland and France as hitmen to basically attack the UK. Now, before you troglodytes in your Celtic jerseys and you pull another you know Wolf Tone CD out of your rack with your nicotine encrusted fingers and sovereign rings that have been scraping along the floors and going, oh, the famine, the Brits, and all this stuff. The What was done to Ireland in the past by British governments in the past, no one today is accountable for. Okay, so it's not the fault of people living in Britain now, England now, or anywhere, but what happened in the past. In fact, since the foundation of the state, it could be argued that Britain was very patient and very supportive of Ireland, and when no one else was, even during World War II, when Churchill was threatening to attack us for not joining in the war against the Third Reich, and because the country's neutrality policy then was to stay out of war at any cost. Even though both the Third Reich and the Allies were threatening to attack us, we stayed out of it and avoided the mass bloodshed of World War II. Although when the history books now show that Ireland was kind of on the side of the Allies behind, but not officially. But anyway, so what happened in the past is, the famine and all that stuff, and that's all in the past. Okay, you don't blame. So those of you say, "Oh, we're getting the Brits back." No, you're not getting the Brits back because you're under another form of colonialism, and I'll explain to you now. The Brexit thing is having repercussions for the UK that are not as bad as the lefties and the globalists wanted it to be, but they're still causing repercussions in the UK. And it's not because the UK is a mess because they left the EU. It's because there's an economic war against the UK by the EU. If there's one thing that keeps a Eurocrat, the plutocrats in Brussels, up at night and makes them sick to the core of their stomach, it is people being able to vote for what they want. There's nothing the European Union hates any more than democracy. It makes them physically ill even thinking about it. And the very thought that one of their nations left, one of the EU nations, Britain, the UK, left the EU by means of a democratic vote. If it had been the government in the UK saying we're leaving without having a national referendum, the EU probably would have been better with that than they are with the people actually saying fuck you. And that's because they are sick to their stomach with the very thought of people being allowed to vote. That's why every national referendum put forward by the EU that people voted on in various member countries were either ignored, told to go back and get the right result, or they were just said no, we're not accepting it. The EU absolutely hates democracy to the core of their being. Now, you know me, I say don't vote in terms of parliamentary elections, but one way you can vote is a plebiscite on something like that. And that was when the real reason the establishment hated Brexit is it was the UK's working class getting back at the establishment. They had a chance to get back at them, and they did it beautifully and in style. And I know people like Christian Morris are pro EU. I'm not, not because I'm against the idea of a European Union, but I'm against the idea of being part of an organisation that has an appalling record on respecting votes, national referendums. That's the main reason. And also that EU Council is unelected. The Commission is unelected. It's just a bunch of plutocrats. Now, so the result of this was they wanted the UK to fail so they could all go, ha ha ha, ha, you left the EU, you're dead. And that was a big thing. That's still a big thing in Ireland. The stupid English, stupid Brits, they left Ireland. I'm talking about the normies, I'm not talking about the average people like me. But a lot of, well, that's what the media have been coaching Irish people to say. I haven't heard any Irish person say, these stupid Brits leaving the EU. I've only heard it from like super normies and the media mostly. I haven't really heard of them any regular. But when I heard an Irish person say things are not going, when an Irish person expresses it, they'll go, things are not good in the UK because of Brexit, and they don't gloat. Like, they don't gloat or laugh. The media do, and the politicians do. So the EU wants to destroy the UK. You have to remember that they want to destroy the UK. For daring to use the ballot box to snub them, and giving little people the chance to do that. Now, I knew they were going to try and get back at the EU, at the UK, somehow or others, and how they're doing it is they have a secret economic war between the UK and the EU, and who they're using to do the attacks are France and Ireland. They're neighbours on either side. They're two closest neighbours. Now, the strategy has been numerous things. Now, for instance, in Ireland, if you buy something from the UK now, even if you're sending gifts from your family members in the UK, the value of that package is now hit with punitive customs charges, colossal customs that are way out of proportion to anything, okay, that was given to any country. Meanwhile, China, where you don't pay. This is the amazing thing. If I buy something from Liverpool across the sea, I am hit with a punitive customs charge. But if I get something from mainland China, I'm not. China is treated by Irish customs as if it's a member of the EU. And they did the same to the USA when Trump was in power. And I keep thinking that they're probably going to stop that soon because Trump is no longer in power. But this is one thing. So this makes it very difficult, not so much for people like me to import hobby stuff and art stuff from the UK, but it'll damn Irish companies who want to buy things from the UK are finding it very, very expensive. And so like you may have had a company in the UK that formerly, like what happened was when Ireland and Britain have and there's a thing called the Anglo-Irish Trade Agreement that supersedes and precedes the Treaty of Rome, and all the other EU treaties from that point afterwards, basically means there's freedom of movement between people in Britain and Ireland, and there's freedom of movement of goods between Britain and Ireland. Well, they haven't changed the law of the Irish government, but what they've done is they put punitive customs charges on imports from the UK. This is directly come from Brussels, by the way, to tell them to do this. So suppose you have a company in the UK that exports, say you're a company in the Ireland. See, if Ireland was a Mickey Mouse potato and fucking, farming land country like it was in the past, it wouldn't matter. But Ireland is a wealthy country now, and the head of IT, big pharma, pharmaceuticals, and everything now. It's a country that so you have a small company in the UK. Say you manufacture a device that you were selling into the Irish market to a company here, and the company says we can't buy your stuff anymore because of the customs and import charges. It's much cheaper for us to get it from Bulgaria or from Italy. Well, that company in England goes out of business. Now, that's the same thing if you have a company down in Dover or Kent, and they're making a product that's dependent on something that's part that goes into the finished product made in France. Say you have a small company, and this is like, if you look at here's an example of it. The automotive business, they don't make everything in the Renault factory, in the Volkswagen factory, in the Ford factory. They make lots of things are brought in from third party providers. And often these third party providers are small companies, literally mom and shop operations. You'd be surprised. There's a place down the road here that makes plastic knobs. It's this part of Sligo is well known for machining and tool cutting and tool making and injection molding. There's a lot of there was some big companies here in this part of Ireland up until recently. They all went out of business because of China. That trained large numbers of young men and women to in the skills of molding making and injection molding equipment and that kind of tool making. Very highly specialist, and it's not easy to fulfill those. And a lot of those young people went on to form small companies, supplying a plastic part for a big company. So there's a company down the road that supplies plastic switches and knobs for, maybe just one or two knobs that's a special to for the cars to Volkswagen, and that's their business. Now you would have those companies in the UK too. So suppose you're down somewhere in Kent, or the south of England, or anywhere in England, and up in Yorkshire, Merseyside, man, it doesn't matter. And you have a small company of say 10 people, and you manufacture a part for Renault or for Volkswagen, and or even for an Irish company, and you're hit with customs charges, and then the Renault says it's too expensive to get it from that company in Yorkshire anymore or wherever, buy it from a place in Denmark, or in Germany or in France or in Ireland, and that small company has gone out of business in the UK because they've lost that. And that's one thing, okay? Another thing is tariffs on goods shipped through the UK. So, for instance, Ireland, Ireland moves goods that are not going to the UK through. You see, Ireland is the only country that's still landlocked in the EU, so it still depends on things like ships and ferries that could bring goods in. So you have a situation where Irish trucks, if they were moving stuff between Ireland and Europe, used Britain as a land bridge. They used Britain as a land bridge, and so the Britain in try put in, it was their which is their right, excise and customs charges, and so those Irish companies say, well, it's too expensive and too long to go through Britain now because of all the paperwork and everything. We'll just take ferries straight to France and Spain, and as a result, new ferry services or or existing ones have been expanded from Ireland to France and Spain, or to Holland, the Hook of Holland, and they've just they bypass the UK to go around it. So on the surface, you may say, well, that's not a big deal. It's a big deal if you are a small town like Holyhead in North Wales, which depends on truckers from Ireland as a major part of your economy. So that, or if you go to any truck stop along the route between Holyhead in Wales and the Channel Tunnel or the Dover ferries, the M6 motorway, down that part of Britain, every single truck stop you stop at, you would see Irish trucks, Irish registration trucks, on their way to Europe or back to Ireland. And they used to keep these Irish truckers used to keep, if they didn't use those motorway services, they would say a certain cafe or a restaurant or a B&B or something like that along the way between Holyhead, usually in small towns, and that poured money into those local economies. Well, that's all gone now. So somewhere like Holyhead, who would you had everything from the local restaurants to the hotels, to everything, making money off Irish truckers, that's all gone now, or it's been greatly reduced. Okay, so because they're going directly into Europe. Now that's this. Now the other part of it is literally, and this is quite dark. It's almost like a siege going on. The UK, what food the UK doesn't produce is produced by this country, the Republic of Ireland. The Republic of Ireland produces colossal amounts of food. And not only things like raw foods like meat and stuff like that, but we produce colossal amounts of processed food. Things that are ready to go. Cheeses, massive amounts of cheese. Like all the mozzarella cheese in this part of the world is produced here. Not surprising we have all cows, millions of cows. We have millions of dairy here derrieres, and the beef all comes from here. And you'll often see signs in British restaurants saying we only serve Irish beef because it's considered like the best, okay, and the safest and the nicest beef. And as well as chickens, everything, right? Massive amounts of agricultural produce is exported from Ireland to the UK. Now, this is basically now hit with tariffs and so on. And it's also more sinisterly, the EU and the Irish government are finding new markets in Europe. So suddenly all this beef, cheese, milk, butter that went to England and Scotland and Wales is all now going down into France and stuff like that. So because Britain didn't have the capacity to fulfill the quota of, say, mozzarella, say all the pizzas, right? All the mozzarella cheese is nearly all made in Ireland, right? Unless it's fancy stuff from Italy. They'd say all the pizza places, it's suddenly jacked up the price of pizzas and cheese because it's not coming from Ireland the way it used to. That's been deliberately done. And this is why your supermarket shelves in Britain are having shortages. It's because a lot of the produce, if it's not all made in Ireland, a major proportion of it comes from from Ireland. And therefore, you can't produce, I don't know, you can't produce lots of, say, frozen pizzas in the UK if all the cheese comes from an Irish supplier, like someone like Glencore and or the Kerrygold, or one of the big Irish ones, right? If that's cut off, you're out of business. You're out of business now, and because or you're going to be really expensive. You can't set it up overnight. You can't say to all the British dairy at your farm, after been using Irish dairy produce for 20 years, and then suddenly overnight you can't say to British farmers, make fucking millions of tons of mozzarella cheese like we used to get from Ireland. They can't do it, okay? And this is why and it's not just, that's just one example, lots of things like that are made, that are produced in Ireland, that Ireland was was feeding the UK. On top, the big population next door, we have a smaller population, and we've got millions of animals and millions of acres and acres of farmland, and that was a big deal, right? So therefore, that's a nasty tactic right there. You're basically starving them like siege warfare. On the other side, the main supplier of dairy into the UK, because there's a huge demand for it, is who? France, right? And France has been doing all the same things to make, like gangsters, now, when I say France and Ireland, I don't talk about the French and Irish people are at war, economic war with the UK people. I'm saying that these are the governments and the globalists who are doing this. And the bureaucrats and the civil servants, they're the ones all behind this. But you have the French system, they're doing the same. So you have the French and the Irish looking at each other across the UK going, let's starve these fuckers. Let's make their, and that's why you have these bottlenecks of trucks at Dover and places. The French do things like deliberately not process the paperwork fast enough. So you might have apples produced in Kent are going to France, right? They rot on the docks. Meat coming from somewhere in England, I don't know, Worcestershire, going down to Germany or Italy, it rots on the docks because the paperwork isn't processed well enough. Another thing they do is they're the ones flooding the UK with these illegal immigrants, these migrants. In Ireland, they try to emigrate here. If they don't have any luck, they'll say, hop on a ferry over to England. There's no customs checks, and you just go straight through, and you're in the UK. Okay, get a train to Belfast and then a ferry over to Scotland, and you're in. And so they're dumping their undesirables here in the UK and in France, and that's why they're coming. They're deliberately letting them through to try and overload the EU the UK asylum system, and This what's happening. It's what's happening. Now, if you took a ferry from Belfast, if you took a ferry from Dublin to Liverpool, I had never ever seen a customs check ever. There was UK customs or police people standing in the ferry terminal, and they were just looking around in case they were looking for someone who looked a bit dodgy or something that didn't, they had a photo ID kit of a criminal on the run, but you were never asked for ID or passports. You certainly were never asked for ID and passports if you went from Belfast to Liverpool, because they're both in the UK. Guess what happens now? You get the ferry from Belfast to Liverpool, and you have to show your passports at Liverpool, at the ferry terminal in Birkenhead. Why? Because in the south of Ireland, the Irish political system has been on the sly saying to people that they won't process their immigration here, going, here's money to go get trained. Go get your Belfast. Go get a train. Hop over you. You'll be in the UK. No problem. Don't worry about it. That's been going on the sly. The French have been doing the saying, oh, my friend, Anglaterra, we ha ha, this kind of thing. You're not going to go to England, Inglaterra, off you go. I've led the pot, this kind of thing. And they've been the ones, I'm saying putting them on those dodgy boats going to England, crossing the English Channel, but facilitating it by going, I see nothing, I saw nothing at all. This kind of thing, right? And the Irish are the same, doing the same. So that's another way they're trying to just economically, socially, and culturally wreck the UK every way they can. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if these fuel shortages in the UK, that they are a result of panic buying so far. But I also believe that they've probably been a result of fuel distributors who, it all has to come from somewhere, calling up the media and saying, we're not going to supply UK garages. It's going to be, and then causing the panics. There's all kinds of shit like that going on. Another one is the prizing of Scotland away from the UK. Okay. Now, under normal circumstances, you'd be very happy that Scotland wants its independence again after 200 odd years, whatever. Well, whenever the Union was. Well, Scotland was in the Union before Ireland was. But whenever it was, okay? And 17 something. And you would say, okay, that's good for Scotland. But the problem is that the Scottish Nationalist Party are absolute fucking wow. You want to talk about globalist scumbags. Basically, they're handpicked by the globalists and the EU with the intended purpose of not liberating Scotland for the sake of the Scottish people, but for getting Scotland out of the Union, the UK, not the European Union, so they can get them back in the EU, that union, but also to demolish any sense of Scots identity through the all I have to try to look at their policies is beyond woke, in the same way Sinn Féin operate in Ireland, into Scotland. So the idea is they want to so culturally change Scotland from, say, England or Wales, that if they do have an independence referendum and Scotland does vote for independence this time, but remember, it won't be a real independence. You'll be taken over by the SNP, Scottish Nationalist Party, who are like, they are worse woke nightmares, okay, lefty nightmares. They will, their brief is to damage the Union. You see, this is part of a war. So there's all kinds of EU agents up in Edinburgh, up in Scotland, prizing and prying Scotland out of the Union, the UK, out of that union, in order to damage the UK. They want, see, because the UK gets lots of money from oil, North Sea oil, and of course that oil will run out. And they're telling that, why do you need to be part of the UK anymore? Scotland would do fine because you have all that oil in the North Sea. But the thing is that the same Scottish Nationalist Party are actively involved in de-fossil fueling Scotland and putting up these windmills all over the beautiful Highlands like they've done in Ireland. And that way, so Scotland, the SNP says, we'll be we'll be okay because we have the oil. But at the same time, they're doing defossilized fossil fuel programs in order to make sure that when Scotland does get out of the Union, if it happens, the UK Union, and then goes back into the European Union, that they won't be allowed to use their oil to actually boost up their local economy. And there's also ways of damaging Britain militarily because they have many major RAF and submarine bases in Scotland, the British Armed Forces. And so that was a way of killing that off as well. Really, so the UK will be just England and Wales. Again, the Northern Ireland thing, in Northern Ireland, they want to unite. They don't care if they get a united Ireland or Northern Ireland becomes independent, highly unlikely, or Northern Ireland forms a new union with Scotland, highly unlikely. The most likely outcome of all would be a united Ireland. But they don't care, the EU. Once it's carved out of the UK, they're literally taking the land off the UK. They're literally demolishing the union, piecemeal, bit by bit. And they'll do the same with the Channel Islands, and they'll do the same with now they'll with this is why the issue with Orkney and Shetland. Orkney and Shetland do not want to be part of an independent Scotland, it seems, and they would probably stay. So it'd be like Scottish independence as it stands right now would be a bigger mess than the Irish independence in 1922, because you would have a situation where, like, that's what happened in Ireland. This is the same thing. The globalists will always carve it up in their favour. Like when Ireland was made independent, what they did was Northern Ireland was basically carved out of the nation because that's what all the heavy industry and shipbuilding and stuff was. So Ireland lost. Well, the same thing will happen with Scotland with the oil, and even the fisheries will go if Orkney and Shetland get independence. Scotland's marine territory, which is as big as Ireland and stretches away into the Atlantic, would be reduced back very small indeed. And that's what will happen. Scotland will, if Scotland gets independence, Orkney and Shetland will be the Ulster of the North Sea. That's what will happen. You just watch. Now, so the UK is being demolished economically, culturally, socially by the EU. In the past, with a strong prime minister, Britain would probably be okay. They would say, look, we will form a new political system with our former Commonwealth, our former colonies, Canada, New Zealand, Australia. But then Britain looks over who is running Canada. A globalist madman named Justin Trudeau. Who is running New Zealand? A globalist crazy bitch called Jacinda Ardern. Who was running Australia? Same. So even their chance of having this trading alliance with their former partners, and remember, there's still a lot of anger in Australia and South Africa over Britain joining the EU, because when Britain joined the EU, Australia and South Africa lost an awful lot of their exports into Britain. That all, they were well, you're in the Commonwealth because you can exclusively export to us. So Australia and South Africa were exporting vast amounts of food to the UK, and then they joined the EU, and suddenly, Australia and South Africa's export markets were cut off. Do you think they're going to want them back? There's still bitterness to this day in Australia over that because it damaged their economy, so the farmers back then so badly. There's still a lingering. So like England and Wales as a union are becoming increasingly purposely isolated by globalists operating through the EU and then their smaller countries like Ireland and France to demolish them. It's really dark and it's really sinister. And those who are going, oh, fuck the Brits, they had an empire, now fuck, look, the past is the past, okay? The average English person in the UK, in England or Scotland, well, won't so much Scotland because they're probably going to be independent. Say England means you no harm in Ireland. In fact, they're probably quite fond of you. Okay, didn't they recently vote that Irish people didn't British people recently say that Irish men the sexiest and that the Irish accent is the most attractive of all accents? So that's like I know English fellas go mad for Irish girls. So I mean that's like that. So they don't have anything against us. So don't be going on about the past is the past. That's over. But to see a country, and a country as ordinary people, not just the aristocrats and the establishment, being punished by the globalists for leaving the EU is something that you should not be gloating over, but something you should be taking as a warning. Because if they do it to Britain, and Britain is not a Mickey Mouse nation by any standards, what chance do smaller nations like Ireland and Denmark and Belgium and Holland and the Eastern have if we challenge the EU? If they can bully, coerce, and harass uh, the UK under this siege warfare. No, don't gloat. Take it as a warning and a sign of how dark these bastards are. They really are. So that's a bit different today from my usual rants, but it's something to be aware of, and something to not take part in, and something to, why the hell is the Chinese Communist Party allowed to give everything, export everything into Ireland, all they want, for free, when our next door neighbours, the country who bought most of our products over the last since we earned independence, gets punished? It's because of the globalists. Remember that, and don't gloat over it. Fight it.